Okay, let's get started here. So today I'm going to talk about using OneDrive for personalization, implementation we did here at HealthPartners. I want to first introduce me a little bit. So there we go. As I said, I am a senior web developer at HealthPartners. I'm the lead developer for my partner, which is our company intranet. It started out as a on-prem SharePoint intranet, and over the last couple of years, we've migrated it to SharePoint Online. I've been doing web design and development for 14 years or so, and these days I'm a front-end developer using React and TypeScript, primarily building web parts and extensions and stuff for M365 in the cloud. All right, so here was our situation. So at HealthPartners, one of our big focuses is personalization, with giving users the ability to customize their experience in whatever way works best for them. Part of that was we had two link-related personalization implementations. We have links, which is the ability to just add arbitrary URLs into a personal list of links, and tools, which was the ability to choose from a curated list of internal applications and stuff that might be useful to you and you want to have easy access to. These were developed at separate times, so even though they're both about links, they were separated. Links we built on-prem and migrated it over, and tools we developed when we were already in the cloud. And once we had done the migration, one of the things that we discovered was that users didn't really understand the difference between a link and a tool. It was all kind of links to them. So, and it was also kind of clunky to have separate dashboards to manage them. So we got a request to combine them into a single interface. And when we were given that ask, it also seemed like an opportunity to fix some structural issues we have with the existing implementations that have been bugging us for a while. So this was some of the technical considerations were we had completely different data structures for these links. So we're trying to combine two things that have completely different data structures. And hang on a second. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So this was the old My Links list, and it was a pretty simple SharePoint list. You got the user name, in this case an email, and then you had two columns, homepage links and links, because we had the ability to have your personal collection of links, and then a subset of that you could have display on the intranet homepage. This was set up as real. These are just strings. You have each URL, each link is separated by a custom character. I guess it's kind of hard to see it here. In this case, it was a custom set. It was an exclamation point in a couple of parentheses. And then within a link, you have the title and you have the URL, and those are separated by a semicolon. So this works, but what it meant was that a lot of string manipulation went into adding, deleting, and moving links around, which I'll show you in a little bit. Tools was a little different. Tools was more, built in the cloud, a little later, a little simpler. It was two lists. One was a list of available tools, which is a curated list of links. And then my tools was again just, get the person and just basically point them, a lookup column that pointed them into that, what tools they had chosen to have for themselves. But again, not much in common under the hood with the data structures between them. The other problem we had was some management concerns. One was everybody, in order for people to be able to read and write to this list, they all had under the hood edit access to it. And so if someone somehow found their way back to that list that wasn't supposed to, they could do a lot of damage either accidentally or deliberately. And then on top of that, we didn't have an efficient way to identify and remove users who had left the company. So that list of my links and my tools just kept getting longer, and increasingly had more and more deadwood, links that belonged to people that were no longer with us. Then we had privacy concerns. Again, because everybody had edit access to this list, if someone made it back to that list, they could see what other people were saving in their links. And besides just that's kind of an invasion of privacy, period, it could get real serious if people happen to be saving URLs that had sensitive details in the URL parameters, and stuff like that. So we didn't like that very much. And finally, and then you also have the code fragility. This is where I talk about the string manipulation. We just to show you in the old code, basically building or updating links involved every time having to cover a whole bunch of considerations based on, like, okay, where is the link relative to the nearest divider code? Every time you want to get a link, you have to first break up that string by the separator, and then break up the link by the semicolon separator. And then when you're putting it back together, you have to do that all in reverse. So that was a pain in the butt. We also had a code duplication problem because we often have our web parts and our extensions, they're in different solutions, but they're all kind of, if they're doing anything at all with this personalization, we had to duplicate that code into a bunch of different places. And so messy code duplicated across multiple solutions, big problem. And then lastly, we worried about performance as these lists got bigger. By the end, our my links list had 16,000 entries and our tools list had 6,600. And it was just, we just could see it getting problematic going into the future. So what we decided to do was, as we were asked, we combined them. We combined them into a single dashboard. But we also thought, okay, this is all about personalization. And why not, instead of storing things in a list where we have to worry about permissions and stuff like that, why don't we just store everybody's data in their OneDrive? Everybody's got a OneDrive. Everybody has access to their OneDrive. Nobody else has access to their OneDrive unless they're given it specifically. So we decided to switch from custom strings and stuff to just using JSON files that we read and wrote to each user's OneDrive. So to give you an example, before I get going with the code demo, I want to kind of walk you through how it works for us. All right, so this is our links dashboard. And the basic idea here is you've got a saved link side, which is sort of your pool of links that you've saved. And then over here on the left, you have your favorite links, and these are your subset of links that will show up on the home page and might also be pulled up in other special situations where you want to see, whatever your really important links. Everything you see here, well, every control you see here is, by the way, is built on Fluent UI. Because we wanted to stay consistent in look and feel with SharePoint. So these are all React components from Fluent UI. But so within this interface, you have a couple of things. Well, number one, you can search your saved links. So if I wanted to search for my Google link, there it is. If I wanted to search for my dog's link, there it is. You can move stuff back and forth a couple of different ways between these two things. For accessibility reasons, we have these buttons. So if I each of them has a tooltip, again, a Fluent UI deal. So if I click on this, it now moves it over into my favorite links. If I click the minus, it moves it back. I can delete it by clicking delete, and it goes away. We also, but it's also a drag and drop interface. So if I want to drag this over, I can. It's over there. If I want to drag something back over here, I can. So a couple different ways to make it easy for people and intuitive for people to decide where they want their links to go. These links are also functional from this page. So if I were to, if I click on Google here, I get to Google. Then when it comes to adding and adding links and tools, there's still a difference between them because even though once they're on your page, they're all in one big pool of links. You add them differently. So when you add links, you start with, you get a little flyout panel, again, Fluent UI panel component. And it's got some validation in it, so you have to have some stuff. One of the things that I like about this is if I try to add a duplicate link from something I've already got, it tells me I've already exists as one of my saved links. So it solves that problem of having the same thing in there multiple times. But let's say here that I want to add MN365.org to it. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Then I put it in there, I add it, and bang, it's down here as MN365. The links are automatically alphabetized and stuff like that. Similarly, if you add a tool, you get a flyout panel, but this is for tools. So this is pulling in everything from the list and showing you what you've got already selected. And if you want to select some more, you can. Finding a tool, you can again search through here. So let's say you want to search down to just C360 stuff or something that says resources, I can get it down so it's an easy list to manage. And then having added in, I don't even remember what I clicked to add. Once you've selected what you want to have, you hit save and it updates your list out here to have it. And to give you, and then once this these links are in, once you've got your personalized links selected and sort of organized, they surface in the intranet in a couple of different places. So this is our internet homepage. We have an extension that injects a navigation bar up here, and one of them is My Links. Here, we load the page so you can see the stuff I just added will be in there too. So, come on. Here we go. So you get this drop down that has all your personal links in it, again alphabetized, a link to the dashboard, and this nav bar is injected into every SharePoint site that is associated with our intranet, our MyPartner intranet hub. So you have this available everywhere, anywhere you want, and anywhere you are in our intranet. And then as far as the homepage display, we have this My Favorite Links section right here, which is where those things you add to the homepage show up as an additional, even more prominent way of seeing important stuff to you. So the last thing that we also did, just to show how we had tied it into different things, we have another extension that allows us to have add, if you're on a page, rather than having to get the URL and then go back to the dashboard and add it manually, you can we have an add page to my links link here that when you add it, it just automatically adds that page into your My Links. And if I go back and reload my page here, the human resources is now in there as an added link. All right, so that's how it works from the user's perspective. Any questions before I go on to show you how the code works? All right. So under the hood, we're using the PNP JS library to read and write to OneDrive. They added a OneDrive section to their graph code a while back. One of the things about this is as we were developing this, we actually, I feel like we were one of the early users of this endpoint because we uncovered a bunch of bugs either in the code in the endpoints or in the documentation that we worked with the developers, the maintainers here to fix. So one of the things, always be willing to ask questions of the library maintainers. These guys in particular tend to be pretty responsive. But basically with Graph, the underlying, since you're using Graph, one of the cool things is you can use their me endpoint. And this basically eliminated all the need for us to do any sort of authentication and permission management, right? It basically finds out you do this graph me drive call, and it gets whatever the current user's drive is, and then you can read and write to that drive because you're operating as that user. The other piece of code I want to point out is this upload content, because the syntax is, you get your drive, you upload a file to it. But even though it says upload, this is basically upload, or it's either create or update an existing file. So you don't have to figure out whether the file already exists. You just use the upload command, and if the file doesn't exist, it creates it. If it does exist, it updates it. Makes it a lot easier. And then the other part is, okay, I'm in the drive. I've got a file I want to update. How do I do it? This one is what took the longest to work out, and this is one of the things I worked with the library maintainers to get into to figure out. But basically, the data is kept as a blob. So you go in here, you get the content of a file as a blob. You read it into an array buffer, you decode the array buffer, and then you have the contents of the file. So that is the underlying three major methods we used to be able to read and write a JSON file into the user's OneDrive. All right, so what we ended up doing was we created a OneDrive service. We one of the things that we're able to do at HealthPartners, we have an internal GitLab instance. So we were able to use it to host our own NPM package, our own internal NPM package, called Common, which we're using for code that again has to sort of be used across multiple solutions. So we stick the code in here, we export it as an NPM package, and then our other solutions can import it just like they would any other NPM package. One of the things we have in here is our OneDrive service, and this is the service that just gets OneDrive info and also reads and writes data to it. So as you can see, we're doing our PNP imports here, where we're getting our, in particular the OneDrive stuff, and some file options, because when you're saving a file, you got to add some metadata about that file, including the contents of it. And there's only 3 methods in here. So you see how short this service is. It's really small. One is you get the OneDrive info. This is just getting the user's OneDrive. That's all it is. And then once you've got that OneDrive ID, you can then use it to get stuff from that OneDrive. So in this case, we have our get JSON from OneDrive, where we pass it the current graph context, the drive ID, and the file name we want. and then your code is to get it. Okay, well, there's get the drive by its ID, get the item by its path, plus its file name. And then when you get the content, like I was said earlier, you get it as a blob. You read it into an array buffer, you decode it, and that ends up, and then you end up with a JSON string. And at that point, you know, you can do, now you can use standard JSON string manipulation stuff to, you know, turn it into an object or an array, turn it back into a JSON string. No more custom string manipulation. Similarly, reading it back in, we have this update JSON method where, again, you pass it out the context, the drive ID, the file name, and the updated content that you want to read into that file. And because you're passing an array, it's really easy to, you just use JSON stringify to turn it into a JSON file. This is where you set the file options, which are basically just what is the content, where is it going, and what kind of type content is it, and then you write it. You know, 73 lines of code. Took me probably 3 months to figure out how to to get it down to this. Okay, so then if you go to our dashboard solution, what we have in the dashboard solution is so this is a React web part, right? So you have a TypeScript file that is the initial load and gather data kind of file. It'll eventually pass it to a TSX file that renders out the data and does all the, you know, interface interaction manipulation. So since the TS file is just getting data, it's pretty simple. Again, we're doing the getting the stuff we need to read write to OneDrive. This line is where we're importing our OneDrive service from our common NPM package. And then some property, you know, getting standard, getting our properties, setting our contexts. And then, you know, we have what we end up having is a parent function that is just all we're doing is grabbing what's already in the JSON files. So we call the OneDrive service to get the OneDrive ID, and we call a couple of sub functions to get the mylinks and get my tools. And when you go down into them, get mylinks is really easy. Grab what's in the mylink. It again calls the OneDrive service to get JSON and passes it the information that function needs. And it's reading from a file called my_saved_links.json in the OneDrive. I'll actually show you guys that right now. So in our OneDrive, we decided to save stuff. We didn't want to save stuff at the top level of the OneDrive in case users accidentally deleted it. So we actually wrote it into a custom folder inside the apps folder in OneDrive. So apps to HealthPartners, and inside that you see all of their JSON files. And we'll crack these open in a little bit so you can see them, but just wanted to show you that they were there. And then similarly, get my tools. It does a little more. First, it just grabs the tools, and then it gets a list of all the available tools, because I'm going to need that to down the road, to build out the list of tools in the pop-out panel, but also just some other things I'm going to want that. And then as long as I've got it here, I'm alphabetizing the available tools array, just so it's done here. I don't have to. It's one less thing I have to do down in the TSX file. That's it. There's no configuration or anything with this. It's just 3 functions. So then we also have we have 3 custom components in here. I'm going well, right now I'm going to show you one. We have the link item component, and what this is the actual. It's just a link item is one of these little white boxes that it represents a link. And because we're using drag drop, there's some things you need to do whenever you drag and drop that makes it easy if it's its own separate component. And for the most part, it's just a standard little component with a, with its markup and its thing. The thing to notice about it is that we have this handle drag start thing, which is how one of the ways that we handle the drag and drop aspect. And what it basically means is when you start dragging a drag and drop item, this is what attaches data to the object being dragged, so that when it gets to its destination, it can write itself into there and update what needs to be done. And it's this event data transfer method that lets you set data of various different types and then arbitrarily kind of what's in there. So in this case, like the text HTML data is the actual HTML markup of the item, so that when it gets there, it displays properly. It basically just copies itself over there. Text plain is where we're copying what the original link was, the underlying JSON object of the JSON of the original link. So we have that, and then just the ID of it, so that we know what to update in the link arrays after we drop it on the thing. So that's what the link item does. Then we'll move over to the TSX component. Okay. So this is what actually renders the interface of the dashboard, and what handles the state for adding, removing links and moving them around between the home page and the regular pool of links. If you look at the state, one of the things we do here is we build the initial combined links array, because remember, even though links and tools are different, we want to display them as if they're one when they're on the dashboard and in other places. So we've passed what we have passed to this file is the list of saved links, the list of saved tools, and the list of available tools. As you can see, here we passed saved tools and saved links. We create a combined link, a list of all of them combined, that ends up getting saved as state here, so that we can keep track of the whole combined thing, and it knows how to render them out. And then the rest of these are again related to drag state, to the drag state, and these are just for opening and closing the pop-out panels to the side. One thing I want to point out about the drag and drop, and there's a links slide later in this presentation, so you'll have it. But when I was looking to implement drag and drop in here, I looked at a couple of drag and drop libraries, and I found none of them to be flexible enough to do what I wanted to do or easy enough to use. So I ended up just coding against the basic drag and drop API specs from WW3, and there's a little bit to it, but it actually all kind of makes sense. It's like, so you have these functions that are just like, well, what do you do when you start dragging? What do you do when you end dragging? What do you do? You've got to enable drop targets and drop places to drag from. So there's basically a method for every little thing you got to do in here, and you just got to, and it's just putting it together. So then you get to the return, the markup, and it's a standard kind of React markup, and just wanted. I guess I should show you the what the JSON files look like. So this is what the my links JSON looks like. It's just a JSON array of items, each with just only 3 properties. Its title, its URL, and whether or not it belongs on the home page. Whether or not it's in that home page or favorite link column. Similarly, my tools is just a reference to the available tools list. And again, is it on the home page or not? So real simple data to work with. So because that homepage thing is a flag, rendering out the data is pretty easy. You take the combined links array that we created at the beginning of this file, and then loop through it. And if their homepage is set to true, show it in the homepage column. And then down here, if where do I have it? If it's might be hard to see, but there's an exclamation point in front of that. If the homepage value is false, show it in the not homepage column. And then so it makes managing the display pretty easy. Some other little things to show. My search box here. This is the one that lets you search your saved links. It really, what it really works as is more as a filter. As you type in there, it filters out the contents of the saved links section to match that. And this is, there would have been more reacty ways to do this, but this is just straight up old school DOM manipulation. That basically get me all the tiles that are in the wrapper div, and if the filter applies to their title, then show it. If it doesn't, hide it. It was simple and easy to do, and so probably kind of hacky, but it's the way I did it. And then one other thing to notice is that these where am I? The add link and add tool buttons, which are right here. All they do is they set that state value as to whether or not the link panel is open. So they call a little function called open link panel or open tool panel. And all those do is set the state of links panel is open to true or not. And then there's another button once you're inside the panel that is close link panel, and it sets it to false. So, you know, the reacty way of opening and closing stuff. So then the other thing I mentioned I made 3 separate individual components. 2 of them, the other 2 that I made were the tools panel and the links panel. I just made them as separate components because they're complicated. They had a lot of stuff in them. They're not really complicated, but they had a lot of markup in them. And I didn't want to make this file just big and unreadable. So the panels in here get reduced to components that are, you know, a single line, so it's easy to read the code here. And then their markup is then, you know, in this separate component file where here's, you know, it's a panel component, and with the stuff, you know, the content inside it. So, you know, pretty standard function stuff. I will say the one thing that I was going to say was, where's my the tools? Nope, I'm not in tools. In the tools section, it has to check to see whether or not you already have the tool in your favorites. So it when it's building the checklist box, it's looping through all the check boxes. It then looks up, it does a little array intersection kind of deal to find out if the ID of this tool is in the your already saved arrays, saved tools, and if it is, then it checks the box. Otherwise it just renders out the list of checkboxes.
Steve, we did have a couple questions actually. Eileen has her hand up again, and she has a question for you. So let's do that first, and then Michael has a question after that.
Okay.
Eileen.
So you answered my first question, which was how is this visible in the OneDrive itself? But going from there, what are the obligations on the user other than to set it up? Do they have any cleanup responsibilities? Do they have any maintenance responsibilities at all? And then do you train the users to leave that folder alone in OneDrive so they just ignore it? Or because if it's visible, someone will play with it.
Well, so there is no training or anything that happens. Everything. If it's the way the code works is if you don't have one of those files in there, it creates a blank one. So from a user perspective, there's nothing they have to do in OneDrive to set it up. It's just basically they'll go to the management dashboard, and if they haven't added it, if they're brand new and they've never been there before, it'll just be a blank page, and then they can just start adding links and tools. And if they accidentally delete their links or tools file, it'll get recreated the next time they actually log on into MyPartner, because those extensions that look for it automatically create a few of them, a blank one if there's not one there.
Well, it won't restore all the ones they had marked. It'll just start them all over again.
No, the developer in me says if you're going to go into a folder 3 levels deep in your OneDrive and delete something you don't understand, that's on you.
Yeah. Okay. And are there any limits to the number of links they can add?
Nope. It's a JSON file. It can be as big as you want.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. There was a second question.
Yeah, it looks like Michael threw in there. What kind of usage metrics do you have for this solution? What did you do to drive user awareness and adoption?
So, I know we'd have normal SharePoint analytics, I guess, on OneDrive usage. I not something I've explored. We do track analytics on other stuff, so we would know, people going to their dashboards. One of the trade-offs of going decentralized, like I'll give you an example. When we had all of my links in a centralized list, when say an underlying link changed, like an internal app moved to a different server or whatever, we had the ability to run a PowerShell script to go through all those links and just update it for everybody. We can't do that anymore. I'll get into this a little later, but while it is possible to add I could run a PowerShell script to add me as an admin to everybody's OneDrive. I, in fact, had to do this as part of the migration from the old MyLink solution to this. It's not something it takes hours to get added to everybody's OneDrive. And then once you're in there, people sometimes notice that you've been added, and then they start asking you questions. So we made the decision that we're not that concerned about whether people having really good granular looks at how many people are using this, or how many links people have on average, or anything like that, in favor of not having to manage it. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
Are there any others, or should I move forward? We're almost done with the code demo, so
I think we're good at this point.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So where? Oh yeah. We. Yeah. We end up building an array of checkboxes that are either checked or not, and then down here in the final render, you just sort of read out the array into that box. So that's the main part of the code demo. And we can always come back to it if there are other questions. So what did we find were some of the advantages here? One is this is extensible, right? Now that we've established this infrastructure for reading and writing JSON files into people's OneDrives, personalization, we can do anything we want. You may have noticed when I was in the in here, we have another one in there called My Partner Home Personalization JSON. What that is, it lets people choose. HealthPartners is made up of basically a bunch of about 11 what we call employers, which are kind of the companies that make up what is now HealthPartners. And we have the ability. We our internal news and announcements, we try to target where necessary or possible, so that, you know, if you're at Regions Hospital in St. Paul and an announcement comes out that is all about something really local to Methodist Hospital in St. Louis Park, you don't care. So you don't necessarily have to see that unless you want to. So My Partner Home Personalization lets you choose who your employer is. It reads your AD to give you a default value, but then you can choose to see how the other half lives and go see what's going on in Regions if you want. Anyway, it changes, it affects what news and announcements and events get displayed on the homepage for you. So that was an easy one to do into here because we had this plumbing already built. It's the scalability, it's awesome, right? It's never more than, you know, a file per person. We could have 150,000 employees and it wouldn't be any different. So love that. Privacy, obviously, it's in your OneDrive. The only other person who's going to see that is if you share it with someone, or if an admin goes through the trouble of adding themselves to your OneDrive because they have to go in and do something. As a performance, reading and writing a couple of files at any given time, again, goes fast. The code simplicity, I guess instead of a lot of custom string manipulation functions, we're using standard JSON conversion methods. If you now making something on the homepage or not is just a matter of setting a flag in the JSON file, as opposed to before, where it was removing it from one column in a SharePoint list and adding it to a string in another column in a SharePoint list. And then it's just a lot more, because it's all very standard, a lot fewer edge cases, a lot fewer opportunities to have bugs or unexpected errors. And then my personal favorite, the no more deadwood. So when someone joins the organization, they get a OneDrive and they get a personalization folder. When they leave the organization, their OneDrive is deleted and it's gone. And there is no admin overhead in managing that at all. And that's pretty much it. These are links to some of the stuff I talked about. Other than that, if there are any more questions, have at it.
I'm not seeing anything else, Steve, in the chat. Hey guys, if you have another question, throw your hand up, come off mute.